Dzień dobry. I greet you all. Well, the title of my thesis is Some Suggestions for the Theology of the Body in Edith Stein. Well, Matt Walsh documentary, What is a Woman, which can be watched on a YouTube channel, helps us to become aware how big the confusion about the nature and the essence of the woman is. In the documentary, the supporters of gender theory cannot agree on the definition of a woman, which remains not only as an unanswered question, but also as a question that should not be asked because it seems malevolent. With this way of behaving, the person seems to suggest that the answer lies in the individual who wants to present only outwardly him or herself as a woman, but not necessarily define him or herself as such. Although the number of male and female people who change sex recently has almost equaled, especially because the number of teenagers who want sex change has increased, the number of men who want to become women still prevails. So this is research of transgender clinic from 2017. But it shows that in 2015 there was two men that wants to become female, but recently, because of the drop of the age of teenagers, it's almost equal, but we need to know that this is research from transgender clinic, and for money, I guess they would like to present it in another way. That's why the question of the female essence, her nature, and the female body still prevails. That's why. That's why the question of the female essence, her nature, and the female body becomes very important in today's confusion about a person's sexual identity. The question of reality of female body is an even broader issue. We can ask ourselves why the female body is something powerful, because even if we want to advertise something or to sell the products, people use female body for that as a sexual object. It becomes so a symbol of the recognition of psychophysical reality that possesses a certain consistency and objectivity, which is supposed to be a foundation of an expression of the inner emotional and spiritual reality. Although the inner spiritual and emotional life of a person is more hidden from other people, and that's why it can be easily manipulated through the physical and exterior dimension of a person, which is more obvious and objective. We can come to the meaning of the wholeness of a person. In evaluation and integration of both internal and external aspects of a person, especially of a woman, we can try to find some answers about what the reality, the human body, and the female body in Edith Stein's philosophical and theological thought. So this lecture is divided in 3 points. First, Edith Stein's consideration of reality of the living body. The second point, Edith Stein, understanding the human body. And the third point, importance of female body. The first point, Edith Stein's consideration of reality of the living world. Edith Stein's search for the essence of phenomena she was investigating with the Husserl's methodology of description of the pure transcendental structures and constitutions left her in perplexity about what a real life, a real person, or a real thing is. A pure essence that is completely separated from the existence become unnatural to someone who wanted the whole reality, especially if we consider the fact that she was a woman. The desire to know the fullness of the reality led her to evaluate the natural attitude of man and the metaphysical foundation of the reality that surrounds us. This awareness of the difference of what is common natural experience of a human being and the experience of an intellectual or scientist that expresses his identity on an intellectual level, we can observe in her writings when she already became to question the Husserl's idealistic approach. When she analyzes the structure of the psychophysical individuum in the book on the problem of empathy, or the problem zum Problem der Erfüllung, she starts with analyzing consciousness and ends with analyzing body of an individual. So we see here in the third chapter the constitutions des psychophysischen Individuums, das reine Ich, der Bewusstseinsstrom und die Seele, Ich und Leib. So we see that here she says, okay, from one side is das reine Ich, the other side is umgebende Welt. So in a sentence of the same book, she describes what phenomenology wants to investigate, saying the entire world around us, the physical as well as the psychophysical, the bodies as well as the human and animal souls, including the psychophysical person of the researcher himself, then succumbs to elimination or reduction. So phenomenology was interested in all, but not in scrutinizing what the real world is. The question about this real world, however, for Stein became more and more intense. This is the reason why she later, when became more realistic in her phenomenological philosophy, for example, Einführung in die Philosophie, if she wrote zum Problem der Einführung in 1916. This was from 1919 to 1921. So she acknowledged that the body of the other is in natural attitude what we first see and what comes into our circle of view. So we see in this book, few years later, that when she describes die ontische Struktur psychischer Subjekte, she starts with Leiblichkeit, die Struktur der Psyche und Stellung des Willens in persönlichen Ich. So it's already a little bit a different approach. And she says, humans and animals and all their states, physical and psychological, belong to the real world and are eliminated with it by phenomenological reduction. So we saw that at the beginning she said umgebende Welt, und jetzt and now she speaks about the real world. So she became more and more interesting in what the real life is. So in the book in Endliches und Ewiges Sein, she will say this. It's more important to know what separates life in this sense, the being of living material formations as living from the life of pure spirits. So what life is, let's say, biological or from a living being, or maybe this spiritual life of spiritual being. So material bounded life is the becoming of a being that first has to gain possession of its essence, that develops, that's on the way to its full self. So it has to become more full. Spiritual life is the development of being as the activity of someone who is perfect in his nature. Again, we are faced with an analogy. The name life is not simply used in a double sense, but has a common meaning here and there. Both are being as self-movement from the ground of one's own being. In one case, however, it's a movement in which beings, as things that are becoming, come to themselves. In the other, a movement in which it as something perfect goes out of itself, so externalizing. Surrounders itself, thereby abandoning or losing itself, both images that more or less completely take part in the fullness of life of divine being. So we see this, we see this, that beides sind Abbilder, die an der Lebensfülle des göttlichen Seins mehr und minder vollkommen Anteil haben. So it's not only the image, it's something real. To comprehend Edith Stein's approach to the woman's reality, we cannot separate this question from the questions of real significance of the body of a human person from philosophical and theological point of view. But a living body, but from life in itself. So the second point, Edith Stein understanding the human body. As it said, the reality of psychophysical dimension of the person is a phenomenon that is given to us as a part of a natural world, naturliche Welt. Edith Stein describes all the dimensions of the human body, so it can be fully understood in its wholeness, like microcosmos, the Leib, only as a part of material, physical, biological, emotion, but even as a part of spiritual and theological dimension. So I took this vision from all the books of Edith Stein, not only philosophical ones, because then she takes only this from natural approach, natural experience, but with, from theological books, I mean, we have the whole vision of the body, so even from theological perspective. If we consider the human body only as physical or material body as Körper, so we need to apply then an abstraction, because it's too obvious to everybody that the human body is not a dead matter, like a stone, for example, or other material substance that has no life in it. Stein takes an example of St. Thomas that says that an eye of a dead man is not equal to an eye of a living man. What we immediately perceive is that the human body is a living and vital body, life, the body as a biological organism that we have in common with plants, also with animals, but this is what Edith Stein refers to when she talks about the vegetal dimension of the human body. That's in the book of the Aufbau. Our body as organisms is subject to constant changes like growth, development, but it also experiences the decline of life force, including the death, just like other living beings. There is also the sensitive or sensual Sinnlichkeit aspect of the body, because we experience it in the way that we feel it. This dimension we have in common with animals, although the way a person feels it, it is in a typical human way. All these passions, and like Stein recognized the expressive aspect of the body on a psychophysical, psycho-emotional dimension that concerns our body as able to express the emotions that we experience in our interiority, like joy, fear, anger, sadness. This dimension we have also in common with animals, but a human person can form these feelings and passions during them turning them into virtues or vices. So we can't say that the fear of an animal is the same as the fear that a human person has. When we are on the level of thinking as the act of the spirit, and when we use our will, using our body, that professor was saying, we experience our body as an instrument of our will. So the difference between fiat and theory, when I make this decision of fiat, I experience like I have to like almost apply my spiritual dimension on my material aspect of body, like, and there's a reality that is the opposite of consciousness. This is specifically a human dimension that makes us free and moral beings. That's why philosophy almost identifies the human being with his spiritual dimension. The body furthermore reflects a person, so we can speak of the personal dimension of the human body. All our deeds are personal deeds because our whole person is or should be expressed in our body. So this persönliche Leib that is expressed, the whole person. Just as the soul is not only a psychic soul, but is a personal soul, so the human body is a personal living body. The highest function of the body is the mirror of the soul, der Spiegel von Seele, in which all its inner life is reflected, through which its soul enters the domain of visibility. The less the soul gives itself to the living body, the more it assumes its form, and with it, the living body itself can be illuminated. The light that fills the soul can penetrate it and radiate from itself. That is the sanctification of the living body through the soul. In sacraments, on the other hand, God's grace can act also from exterior to interior, and in this way, the grace can influence and sanctify the human body. So we have something from like body of Christ or body of saints or something from then can pass through a material thing to our body. Like sacraments are acting on this way, like through body. In sacraments, on the other hand, God's grace can act also from exterior to interior. This is the question of a miracle, with something is done in this way. According to Salvioli, this sanctification consists in restoring a certain harmony between the living body and the soul, which constitutes a healing and a liberation of the living body itself. The human body has also a symbolic and almost a sacramental dimension, because Jesus is the Eucharist. In the Eucharist is the body that represents everything that a real human body should become. Even John Paul II said that we should become as a Eucharist, actually, to reduce our I to almost Eucharistische Ich. No? So the incarnated Logos is therefore originally the one in whom the Trinity says all of itself and all of creation, insofar as in the words of Colossians 2:9, it is in Christ that all the fullness of divinity dwells bodily. Colossians 2:9. The body as life in its expressed dimension of essence is the image of the eternal Word that assumes human nature. So the third point, importance of female body. In Edith Stein's time, the psychophysical difference between men and women was a fact that was obvious to every man. For someone, it was only a matter of biological diversity, but even then, some theorists of spiritual sciences had, as she says, the tendency to view sexual differences as something historical, conditioned by external circumstances. With the realistic approach of the phenomenological method, open to metaphysics and theology, in her analysis of a woman, Edith Stein integrated two extremes in one. The biological aspect of a woman's body is much more obvious in women than in men. She will say that the female body was created to be one flesh with someone else and to nourish a new human life within itself. So when we said that normally we perceive a human body as a living body life and not only as a material body corpor, she states that female body is more characterized with the aspects of life and biology than masculine body. So does Edith Stein claim in the book Der Aufbau der menschlichen Person. The organismic character of the plant-like character of man is not always equally pronounced. It appears purer in children than in adults, and also purer than in young people. It's not just a poetic image, what one likes to compare children with flowers, but has a factual basis. We find here a relatively uninterrupted self-development and self-revelation, a calmness in oneself. And that is why we have the impression of innocence, a peacefulness, and selflessness here too. Furthermore, the organic character appears relatively more prominently in women than in men, more strongly in natural men than in civilized men. Finally, there are strong individual differences in this. So in this passage, we can see that biological dimension is not something that is judged as a dimension opposite to what the real human person is, but on the contrary, the dimension evokes the beauty of the flower, self-development, self-revelation, calmness, innocence, peacefulness, selflessness. Female's body is therefore more expressive body than the body that is perceived as an instrument, which is more masculine characteristic. It means that the woman has a special relationship with her body, which defines her in a different way than a man. She feels more the conditions that arise from the relationship to her body. This affects her entire existence, thinking, feeling, internal and external actions, as well as relationships with others. She feels her body more in a sensitive than a sexual way. Edith Stein assumes that in a woman, body, psyche, and soul are more united than in a man. That she feels it interiority and exteriority as one, more than man feels it. Her body, as exterior aspect of a person, is much more suitable to transmit the interiority of the person. That's why she experiences her body more as a personal body, likewise the body of the other person. With the fact that she can experience her body in a more spiritual way, we are more able to understand what it means to be in image and likeness of God as a person in her totality with her body and soul, or in body and soul. That was difficult to understand even for St. Thomas or St. Augustine, because even they say that we are on image and likeness of God as spiritual persons, with our conscience, our will, our freedom, and body and emotions and sense that we have in common with animals. If we consider that the human body has all these potentialities and that we are called to be united in one body with Christ as church, but in some way even as a humanity, then all what is physical, biological, psychical in human being is not just a matter, the body, to which has to be applied the form, the soul. Stein considers this realm with these words, like, apart from the fact that according to our view of the continuous unity of soul and body, all bodily processes, if they are really bodily and not purely physical, are at the same time also spiritual ones. The relationship of woman to man is certainly not one according to the will of the Creator to think merely of predominantly as physical things. So that's why after John Paul II, when he speaks about theology of the body, he talks about our sexuality as something that is also enters in the image and likeness of God. So for Edith Stein, human spousal relationships are an image of God's spousal love to the soul, and this human reality becomes a symbol of the divine reality that can be expressed in it. As a woman in her nature is created by God as a spouse and a mother, and all the dimensions of her person are marked by this truth, all her biological, affective, mental, and spiritual dimensions. A woman in her real ontological and ontic constitution is more on image and likeness of the Holy Spirit and the triune God that is communio personorum and love in itself than a man who expresses more the transcendence, objectiveness, and providence of God the Father. Always analogy. In woman, the aspect of love is of main importance for her life, and if she finds the most supreme reality of life, which is God as love, she is found a meaning of life that can reveal to the others with her life and her action. Of course, without Christian faith, God that is a Trinity, and Jesus that is incarnated Word, it will be difficult to understand the real woman as woman and man as one body, and woman in her role. I mean, in her personality, in all her person that is in image and likeness of God. Now, so as a conclusion, a woman by her vocation from God, but also with her original constitution, is a prophet of God. John Paul II says the prophet is one who speaks the words of God, but also speaks with his, like he has experience of the living word. So, prophet of God, of humanity, of life, of nature, of beauty, of reality, of truth and love. As a prophet, she speaks with her life as a person, with her body, with her gestures, with example, with her embodied soul and heart. Today, a real and realized woman becomes a great sign appeared in heaven. The quotation is referred to Mary, to the church, but also to any woman that realizes this vocation in herself. Thank you very much.